We're in Austin, Texas. It's August 30th.
10 minutes to 2.
10 minutes to 2, 2007. And yeah, I'm Larry Cuban. This is my brother Norton Cuban. And I've been doing work here in Austin. And Norty flew up here this morning so that we can have this opportunity to talk about how he and I were raised over the past 70 to 80 years. But most important, we'd like to have this as a gift of ours to our children and grandchildren who will probably not ever have the experience of knowing people that were born in the 1920s and 30s. And
40s.
Pardon me?
In the 40s.
Who was born in the 40s?
Not born, who lived through the 40s.
Who lived through the 40s and the 50s and survived at that time. So that's why we're here, and we hope to have this kind of a record. It's something that we have been talking about doing for a long time, and so we're here now. Now, Norty, you're 9 years older than me. Our oldest brother, Marty, died in 1999 in October, and it will be 8 years in October.
Isn't that long?
Yeah, so we're the only ones left of the Pittsburgh Cubans.
Lose track of time, yeah.
And so, because you're 9 years older than me,
don't rub it in.
it wasn't my fault. It wasn't your fault. It's just the way it happened. I wanted to have you talk a little more about growing up in New York, where you were born, and then we'll segue to Passaic, New Jersey, where I was born, and then into Pittsburgh, where both of us grew up at different times. So let's start with this photo right here, Norty. In this photo, there's Mom and Dad, Mom's sister, Tanya, with her two kids, Sydney and Al. Sydney is still alive. And then the two of you, Marty and yourself. Now, this was taken somewhere in New York or something.
It was taken up in the country. My mother, my parents used to take me up to upper state New York. I remember that very well. And get out of the city in the summertime because it was very hot. And we used to live up in the farm area there. And I remember Marty. One time we went into the city and he was in the back of a horse-driven carriage, and he wouldn't let me get back onto the wagon. I'll never forget that. I ran all the way, followed behind, and he wouldn't let me get on. I told you he always had a mean streak.
Yeah, that's what older brothers do to younger brothers.
And I'll never forget that.
What was it like growing up in the city? We lived at that time.
We lived on Fox Street.
Yeah, what was it like growing up there?
Growing up there, we used to play stickball, which has always stayed in my mind, where you play in the streets and the cars and everything. The manholes were a base. One car would be a base for third, yeah. One for second, and so forth. And one particular time, Mark got hit by a car on the street. And it was pretty bad. They took him up. We lived in an apartment right close by. And they wanted to amputate his leg. And my mother and your mother wouldn't let him do it. And she nursed it back where he saved his leg. Yeah. And I'll never forget that. My mother and I, over a period of time, weren't the greatest, but at that particular time, and with you,
yeah,
when you had with your leg,
with the polio,
yeah. She had some real terrific things going for her. Yeah. But living in the streets of New York, and Marty and I, when we went to school, when we played hooky, we used to go to the Bronx Zoo, and it was different. It was not a matter of different. That's the way it was.
Yeah. Now, what was Dad doing at the time? What did
Dad was a waiter He used to get up every morning and put on his tuxedo with his bow tie. He made good dough in those days. He worked at these restaurants, and he did good. And over a period of time, he put enough money together where he opened up a grocery store. And the grocery store was good and so forth. And all of a sudden, there was a fire in it, and it burned it out. And we're back. It's wherever we were, but we moved to Passaic, New Jersey at that time. He opened up another grocery store, and we did excellent there. It was very good.
Where did we live at that time?
We lived in.
The store was on the ground floor or something.
It was right on Main Street.
Yeah.
And there was a side street. I've been trying to think of that.
Forget it. It doesn't matter. Go ahead.
Yes, it does. It makes me feel that I can remember things. You'll get to that point. But he made it was. I'm trying to think back of it. On Main Street there, he had an excellent place going. There was a woman who took care of Marty and I, and they were doing excellent. But then the Nazi Bund had a camp out there somewhere, and they used to come over and parade in front of us. Don't buy in this Jewish place, the Yids.
Yeah.
And well, to get into that.
And
then we lost it. He lost it. Kroger, I remember Kroger wanted to buy it, and they gave him a good high price. And then when they start, the Nazis start coming and patrolling, they should throw stink bombs. A stink bomb is where you have film, and you set it on fire, and then you stamp on it and throw it into the grocery store, and that killed the business.
Yeah.
But back off, I remember Passaic, when you were born, I used to take care of you. Mom used to say, your job is to take care of him. And I said, why? But it was a beautiful place, Passaic, New Jersey. Yeah. We lived in, it was like living out in gorgeous land. We used to play softball. I used to play softball, and you used to be in the carriage. I used to wheel you to home plate, and somebody would watch you, and I used to hit the ball. I tried anyway. Yeah. Hit the ball and run around and come around and come. Then I used to say, okay, I'll take care of them now. They had a creek running through the center of Passaic Park, and it had a little waterfalls. And the waterfalls, I used to strip down with the other kids and jump into the park, jump into this pool. And they had what they called bloodsuckers in those days. And
leeches.
Leeches.
Right.
And we used to call them bloodsuckers. And they used to take, when you got out, you took a cigarette. No, I didn't smoke. You took a match and you lit it to the leech so it would come apart.
Right, yeah.
But it was beautiful. They were a good place. And my mother's sister Sarah used to come over and live with us because they didn't have any place to live. Yeah. And then Sydney and Al used to come over and live with us. And Mom used to put them up. And I remember Marty and I used to stay up late before they came over. And we had a radio. But the radio, to listen to it, we had to get a battery, a car battery, and hook it up. And we used to stay up listening to radio. And then it came to the point where we had to give everything up, and we went to Pittsburgh.
Well, this is the height of the Depression at this time.
It was the height of the Nazi Bund.
But that's all during
the Depression didn't affect us at that time.
Yeah.
And we were making, Mom and Dad were making very good because they had a woman taking care of us upstairs above. And I used to go to, they had a streetcar, they had a train that used to run through the center of downtown. And we used to go to the movies. Dad had a 30 36, 35 Chevy. We used to load up on it and drive into town and go across the streetcar tracks. The streetcars, I keep calling it was a train tracks.
Yeah.
I keep calling it streetcars. And we used to go to the movie and look at the movies and that.
Well, what happened now when we went to Pittsburgh?
Well, Pittsburgh, when we left Passaic, we left in a car. It was a black car. That's all they had in those days, 4-door, which was small. And we had 2 cats, gray cats. And Mom didn't want to take them into Pittsburgh, so we dropped at a farm on the way back, and we put the cats on a farm. Why I remember that, I don't know. And then we drove to Pittsburgh.
But why Pittsburgh?
Huh?
Why did we go to Pittsburgh?
Because Mom had 5 sisters living there.
Jessie.
Well, there was Jessie. She came in from Argentina.
Right. Sarah.
Sarah lived there in Pittsburgh with Minnie.
Minnie's.
And who's the other one?
Tanya.
Tanya. She died.
She died. She died in New York.
Thought,
she died in New York.
Then
yeah.
who was the other one? The
there,
one who was they put away.
I don't remember
asylum.
her name.
Cindy's mother.
No, I don't think
Yeah.
so. No. But I'll remember that our grandmother lived in Pittsburgh too, which
Yeah.
was another reason why we'd go to Pittsburgh.
I always thought she was.
Yeah.
That's who they put away in an asylum because she couldn't talk.
I don't remember that at all because that was.
And
before.
they didn't talk about her. And I couldn't understand.
So we go to Pittsburgh because our mother's family was there, basically.
Yeah. Sarah was the first feminist I ever knew in my life. She was a swinger. Anyway, and Jessie married a real estate guy, and she got above and beyond all of us.
Minnie?
Minnie married a guy from the Merchant Marine. He beat the...
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's right. And he was a printer.
That was on, not Fifth Avenue.
It was on, off of the Boulevard of Allies.
Yeah, right,
Yeah,
right.
Yeah. All right, so we're in Pittsburgh and we have no money at all. So what was it like?
We were on welfare.
Yeah.
My mother used to send me down to Washington Trust on Lower Fifth Avenue. She says, get the check. I said, what check? She says, they'll give you a check, welfare.
Yeah.
She didn't mention welfare, she
Yeah.
says welfare. I said, okay, so I used to walk down through Lower Hill District, down there, and they used to give me the cash. I used to put it in my shoe and walk back home and give it to Mom. And Dad used to have a panel truck, and he used to go out to the outskirts, the farming, not the farming area, the mining area. And that had to be, shoot, how old was I then?
Well, it was the mid-30s. It was like 36, 37, because I was about 2 to 3 years old when we go to Pittsburgh. So you would have been, in this case, 11, 12 years old. And Marty was, in this case, 16, 17.
Marty worked for a drugstore in East, where the heck was it? East End?
Ellsworth.
Ellsworth Avenue,
Right.
right. I'm sorry, thank you. It was in Ellsworth Avenue. He worked there, and during the daytime. At night after school, he got me a job working for them.
Right.
That was during the Second World War time. I remember that very well. Now, we were discussing that before.
Right.
And they had this African American, at that time it was a colored guy, now it's African American. And after we used to close down, I used to clean up the place, put the beer cases around. In the drugstores, you could sell beer at that time. This had to be Well, the war was in 41. It started in December 7th, so it had to be maybe 42. And he used to take me to all these black clubs. And I used to, man, I got into it swinging. I learned fast.
Well, you were about 16, 17 at the time. 16.
I was close.
Yeah,
I was close. And he took me, he learned me about what life was all about. Really, he did. And then when, after that, I worked in drugstores. I worked in, oh God, steel mills. And I used to shovel steel, coke into the furnace. And then I quit that job after 3. I said, you got to be an idiot to go in here. I was smart then.
Well, you and Marty were doing, had to bring money into the house.
Yeah.
Yeah, there was no question about it.
Yeah, my mother, our mother, yeah, was really something.
Yeah.
She used to pat you on the head. I used to get $5 a week after I brought in money.
Well, the neighborhood we lived in was a mixed neighborhood. Mostly, it was then called colored, later Negro.
Well, that was the Lower Hill District.
It's a Lower Hill
We
district.
lived on top of Cheesy's pool room.
Right.
I'll never forget that one.
Yeah.
And
You could hear the click of the balls.
not only that,
Yeah.
but I remember my mother used to put me, says, you have to help me. May sound disgusting, but that was part of life at that time. The beds had bed bugs in it.
Right.
And we used to take everything apart, take hot water, put a pan under there, and pour the hot water where you used to put the railing in and click it in. Never forget that.
No,
You pour that,
I
you
remember
pour it
that.
in. And then I used to get very angry, and being a kid, it wasn't my thing. And I used to get what the hell was it called? Potato bag and fill it up with bottles and paper and everything and hit it with my bare hands to get my anger out. And I used to smash into break bottles and everything. But I used to smash and cut my hands up. And it just, it was a part of life.
Our dad was doing okay. It was during the war, and we moved up to
Heron Hill.
that was Upper Center Avenue. But after that, because you went to Heron Hill Junior High and then to Shenley.
Well, I went to Miller School first. At the
Right.
lower, then I went to Shenley.
Yeah.
But at the Lower Hill, I remember we used to listen to the fights, Joe Louis, Max Schmeling,
Right.
and all these fighters. And there was a piano playing place. They sold sheet music and everything. I forgot the name. I could picture him. He wrote songs and everything, the guy. They used to put a loudspeaker on, and everybody used to gather on the streets. Traffic used to stop. And they used to put on the fight or a football game.
Right.
Not a football game, baseball game, but Pirates. And we used to sit out there on the streets on Center Avenue and drink milk. And listen to the fights.
Yeah.
And then there was Rosen used to have a bar and grill across the street. I used to go with the son. And then there was another bar and grill. It was a restaurant, they called it in those days. The first African American guy I ever met, because when I came from Passaic, New Jersey, there was no African Americans around in that particular area. Going back to Passaic.
Sure.
I used to go, and it was an agricultural place at that time. And what we used to do is put salt in our pocket and go through the tomato patches and pull the tomatoes off and then put salt on it and eat them. And the farmer used to scream bloody murder. Then I used to walk down to Hackensack, and it was, oh God, it was something. But to come back there.
We moved from Pittsburgh during World War II in the Hill District. We moved up to Loretta Street, and then you go.
That was Greenfield.
Greenfield, that's right. And there, I'm about 7 years old now, and you are graduating Taylor Alderdice and going to the service, going to the Navy.
Well, before that, all I remember is working. But before that, I graduated in '44, and that was in June and July. They took my ass into the service right away. They needed men, but I missed a lot in my life. I'm sorry.
I was 7 years old. Here's a photo of me in a soldier's uniform because Marty was in the Air Force and my brother and Norty, you were in the Navy.
Yeah, I was a Seabees.
Yeah, and so I wanted to wear a uniform, and we didn't buy this house in Loretta. We rented. We rented it.
No, your mother bought this. It was the first time. No, Munhall Road. Munhall Road.
Right. Yeah. See, my memory is okay too.
Hey, give me another drink.
Why did you eat a little?
I'm getting ready for the night.
I know. Why did you work on the munchies here? We'll put the wine over here.
I'll remember more.
So we move up to Munhall Road. You're in the service, and one of the things that I remember very well when we lived in Greenfield was that there were only 2 Jewish families.
And Turkle and us.
Us, right. And what happened is that there weren't too many Jewish kids at the school, and it was mostly a Christian. You're laughing. But
they beat the hell out of me.
Yeah. I used to get beat up a lot. So one time I told you about that. You would come home on leave.
Yeah.
And I told you about that. So you go over to the guy's house.
What the hell was his name?
There were 2 families that had kids who beat me up.
One was the other one?
The one was an Italian family, and you told
the other was Irish.
Yeah, the Curtains. One was the Maronis, the other was the Curtains. And you went to each of those families and you told their teenage kids to lay off of me. Well, you know what happened.
They beat you up.
You go back on leave, you go back to the service, and they were ruthless with me.
But I came back. Isn't that funny? I was thinking about that a couple of nights ago. Yeah. And I can't think of his name, but I remember I knocked at the door and I said, I'd like to meet your son. He says, he was killed. I said, I'm sorry. And I walked away, and that was that.
Yeah.
There are certain things come up to me. When I went to Taylor Alderdice before I went into service, Nick Lodato, who lived in Greenfield.
Yeah.
It was on Loretta Street. Nick Lodato and me and a couple other guys. But Nick, I remember very well. We used to meet on a corner of Loretta and Murray Avenue.
Right.
And we used to walk to school, Taylor Alderdice, and they used to have these trucks. They used to stop with milk, cake, and deliver to the stores. So we used to wait until they go in the store, then we hit the back of the truck and we pull out cakes and milk and everything and walk to school every day and drink all this stuff. But Taylor Alderdice was, it was supposed to have been at that time the upper class of Squirrel Hill.
It was, right? It's mostly Jewish.
It was a section. Well, we didn't because I was working all the time. I worked for the drugstores. I was what they used to call a soda jerk in those days.
At the Marlfield Pharmacy.
Marlfield and Beacon.
Right.
Yeah. Beacon. And then there was Sun Drug on a corner of Forbes and Murray.
Right.
And I used to work there too. Then you go to work.
You had a hard time at Alderdice because you knew you had to graduate and you were taking math with a teacher that I had years later.
Buzz Wagner.
Yeah, Dr. Wagner. And you remember how he helped you get through?
Yeah, the reason he stood in my mind because there was a flyer at that time in the Pacific named Wagner, and he shot down so many Japanese planes, and I always remembered Buzz Wagner, we used to call him. And I used to go to, instead of going to school, because I was working a lot and I got fed up, I figured I'm going to service and who knows when I was coming back. And I went to the pool room, the one on the corner. I'm trying to think of the street. It wasn't Flemington. Flemington
No,
was
it's
across
Phillips Avenue. It was Ross's pool room.
Ross's pool. You were there too.
I used to hang out there. That's right. So go ahead.
I used to go there instead of going to school.
Right.
So finally, come to the graduation, and he says, "Look, you're going to fail unless you pass some, math." And I said, "I don't care. They're going to take me in service one way or the other." He says, "But you'd be better off doing it this way." So he says, "You pass this test." He says, "I'll pass you." And I passed the test. And he passed me. I never forgot him.
Well, I didn't either because I was very poor in math when I was going through Taylor Alderdice was coming up. And like yourself, although it wasn't wartime, I had to work a lot also. But
leave it to our mother.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, she really instilled a work ethic in us.
Did she?
So when I got into Wagner's class, it was trigonometry, and I just didn't understand anything at all. It was geometry. And
geometry was the day, right.
It wasn't trig. No,
it wasn't
I would have
trig,
never
no.
made it to trig. And I just barely got through, but he remembered you. And he remembered that you had served and everything, because you graduated in 44. I graduated from Taylor Alderdice in 51. He was still there.
I was in Korea.
You were called back a second time.
Yeah.
And you were called back in
50.
In 1950. Let me tell you about some of my memories.
Oh, good.
I remember that the summer that we moved from Greenfield to Squirrel Hill was the summer of 44, and I got polio then. Was 44 or 45? I forget. And it probably was 45 because you were just coming out of the service. I remember now. And I was lucky with the polio because it only affected my left leg, and I lost my calf muscle. Other people, it was much more terrible, and they died and everything. But I was lucky, and Mom massaged my legs. That was the only therapy at that time for polio. But I lost so much weight, and I remember you had come out of the service, and we had moved up to Squirrel Hill, Munhall Road, and I weighed about 60, 70 pounds. And
I don't remember you.
Well, you had come out of the service, and you were spending the GI Bill money, and you were a counselor.
$52.20 a month. $20 a month.
But Mom convinced you to be a counselor at Emma
Farm.
At Emma Farm, and she said, "Take care of your brother, because he can't walk." You remember that?
Oh, I remember that.
So it was.
I gave up a lot for you.
But it was just like when I was in a carriage in Passaic, because I couldn't walk at all.
I forgot. You're right.
Yeah, I couldn't walk. So I was at Emma Kaufman camp, and you were, all I remember from you as a counselor is that you were drinking every night. That's all I remember.
You're not going to say that.
But it's true, isn't it? Because either High or Rome were there, your friends were there.
Yeah,
too.
they're all dead now.
Yeah.
I'm the only one alive of all of them.
That is true. That is true, and I'm glad of it. Not glad that they passed.
Well, they were nice guys.
But I remember that I was a real baseball fan, and that I could play, but I couldn't run the bases.
Yeah.
And I had fallen down a couple of times, and they called you, and then you carried me to the bunk and all that.
You remember that?
I do. Well, of course I'm going to remember it. You're not going to remember that. I'm going to remember that because it happened to me. So that's at Emma camp, and I remember some of the other things is
I
that,
feel like I let you down.
how could you? You were
I don't
working
know.
all the time.
I feel like
No, and you went through so much after in World War II in Okinawa. So no, I have never felt that way at all. But I went through Taylor Alderdice, and then I graduated. And one of the things that our mother did was that I had to work, because so I was setting pins at a bowling alley,
I remember that.
and I became a good bowler. I was a very
Oh,
good
you
bowler.
were damn good.
That was the only
Not
thing.
as good as me, but you were damn good.
That was the only thing that I ever gambled at. But I used to set pins. This was before the automatic
Automatic pin, yeah.
pin setter
We used to
for
do a lot.
bowling. And those were duck pin bowls.
Right,
Remember that?
right.
Yeah. And then I worked at the A&P on Murray Avenue. There was an A&P right next to the drugstore at the corner of Forbes and Murray.
Maybe?
An A&P or Kroger's. Maybe. No, I think it was an A&P.
I don't remember. I'm sorry, I just.
But I worked there in high school, and then I worked there going to Pitt because my friends were going to Pitt, and I had never thought about college because I was a very poor student in high school.
No, you weren't. The teachers were very poor, not
No.
you.
No.
Look where you are now and look where the hell they are.
That doesn't, whatever the case
It cuts with me, that's all that counts.
whatever the case was, I was a very poor student, but my friends were going to Pitt. You know, Yus and Dave and Al and all of those friends were going to Pitt. And so I went to Pitt and I worked all the way through. And Mom said, you know, we can't help you other than you could stay at home, room and board.
Boy, does that sound
Yeah.
familiar.
So, and then you and I lived in Munhall Road.
Yeah.
We shared the same bedroom. You were working at National Record Mart. You hadn't moved out of the house.
No, hell no.
That's right. And I would hardly ever see you at night. Tell me about some of the stories when you would come home and Dad would be upset with you.
Dad would be at the door, you bum, you. and other things, but, oh, Dad. No, you know, if I paid more attention to you at those particular times.
I felt you paid attention to me.
No, I did.
I felt you cared about me.
Oh, I love you. I
Yeah.
love you now, but
Yeah. You didn't love me then?
no. I loved you all the time.
Do you know the thing I remember most? And the kids couldn't believe me when I told them that we never celebrated a birthday in our family.
No.
Never had
Never,
that.
never.
Except you, on
Never.
my birthday and on Christmas, you would bring little things home. Either you stole them or you bought them. I don't know what you did.
Oh, thanks.
But you would bring them home for me. And that was the only recognition that I ever got that I was getting older, or a birthday or something like that.
I
But see,
don't remember.
well, you don't remember, but I do, you know. And so I felt that, you know, because Marty had been out of the house. He got married when he was 23.
43. In 1943.
In 1943,
Never forget that.
we were living on Loretta Street.
Yeah.
And Natalie and Marty went, you know, they were in the service. He was in the service. They went to Baton Rouge, Lake Charles, Louisiana. So I really didn't know Marty. Marty was 15 years older than me. And you and I are the ones
We're
that...
very close.
Yeah, you and I are the ones that spend a lot of time together. Yeah, a lot of time. So, so I felt that you always cared for me. I always felt that.
But I remember when I gave you my 52 Chevy four-door, and I had prophylactics in a glove compartment.
But see, you taught me to drive. You taught, and you let me. You bought your first
All
car.
I heard was, who leaves prophylactics? I says, I do. I may need them.
But what you do remember is that I didn't learn to drive until I was 19, and you bought your first 55 Chevy then.
52.
Was it a 52 Chevy?
52 Chevy.
And you let me use it.
Oh, yeah, I had no problem with that. It's
Uh,
more than my father and your brother would do.
The thing about it that I also remember, Norty, is that I always wore hand-me-downs from you and Marty.
Oh God!
So I go to this prom. I go to this prom, and I was so shocked. This girl asked me out to go to this prom, but I didn't have a suit. I didn't have a suit at all. So Mom goes into the closet, picks out one of your suits. You're 2 inches taller than me, so I put on this blue suit. It's your suit. I put on this blue suit and the cuffs. And the haircut, and then the cuffs are all the way down.
You're kidding me? Why didn't you tell me?
Well, I didn't have a suit to wear.
I would have got you something for Christ's sake.
I hardly ever saw you at the time. You were out and about a lot. So those are some of my memories.
I'm sorry.
What are you sorry for?
I'm sorry.
We're laughing about it now.
Yeah, but it's still. I miss you.
Yeah. Well, it's. I'm glad that we can have the memories and that we can laugh about some of these things.
Well, there's memories.
You say you miss an awful lot with me, Norty, but when I think of the Great Depression, I think of the Nazi American Bund, and I think about World War II. I mean, those really had an enormous impact on our lives. I mean, both you and Marty went off with the Bund putting Mom and Dad out of business, therefore driving us to Pittsburgh. And I mean, these events we had no control over whatsoever. You had to work. You were working when you were 10 years old. You were selling newspapers in Pittsburgh. Yeah, you were selling newspapers when you were 10 years old.
I was selling magazines at Passaic. I remember I used to stand on the corner as the streetcars used to come up and sell Liberty, Women's Home Companion, and Saturday Evening Post. Used to sell them for 5 cents or so forth. Then I used to go to the stores and try to sell them. And I remember when Cindy and Al lived at our place, we used to shoot firecrackers off. And that idiot, Al, he says, "I'll show you how to shoot firecrackers." He tried to shoot one, he blew his hand up.
Oh, jeez.
Al was...
he knew everything.
Yeah.
Wanted you to talk about you and Marty. Here's a nice photo of you and Marty during World War II, just after World War II. And he was your older brother.
And yours?
And mine too, but there's 6 years difference between you and Marty.
City.
That was in Atlantic City. And there was 6 years difference. Do you remember?
And I'm taller than he is.
And you're taller, and that's important to you. I know.
He's a good-looking guy.
Yeah.
But he's a pain in the ass anyway.
Well, he wasn't for many years because our mother looked upon him as the golden boy in many ways.
He always was. It's not that he looked on.
Yeah.
He always was.
Right.
He always was. I remember she used to call up at work and say, "Can I speak to Marty?" I said, "Yeah." It's not "how are you" and so forth. She talked about Marty.
Well, just to give a framework to it is that...
You give that.
Yeah, is that after World War II, you bounced around to a couple of kinds of jobs. You were at the National Record Mart, an assistant manager.
And I managed stores and everything. Patty Page, King Cole, I used to meet them. Everything in music.
And you love that a lot.
Oh, man, yeah. I still do.
Yeah. The thing about it is that it was a family business and they were not going to, there was no future for you.
Howard, let's see, Howard, Sam, and who was the other idiot? They're all... let's see, Howard was the oldest, Sam was the one who ran it, Jason.
Okay.
So, give me enough and I'll tell you everything.
Well, but there was no room for someone outside the family in that business.
And Pappy, the old man.
Yeah.
He had one of these things in his throat. He had cancer in the throat. He had a voice thing.
A voice box, yeah.
Voice box, yeah. It wasn't a box. It was like a magnet. What do you call them?
Amplifier.
An amplifier,
right.
Yeah.
The thing about it is that when you saw that there was no future there, then Marty asked you to go into the business with him.
No, you're wrong.
What's that?
Marty didn't. It's not that there was any future. After the Second World War, I loafed around. I traveled a lot, hitchhiked a lot, and I'm trying to put it all in perspective. And Marty didn't come into the picture until I went through. You okay?
Yeah.
I went through.
Here's what I remember. That for any number of reasons, you go into the business with Marty. Marty has a business, a seat cover business that Natalie's family helped stake him to that on Fifth Avenue. A small seat cover business that sells auto accessories.
It was on Lower Fifth Avenue.
It's right by Fifth Avenue.
By Fifth Avenue High School and DeVilliers Street.
And I worked there on the weekends because I'm a teenager there and I'm going to school and I need extra money. And my brother is a tough taskmaster, so he has me working on weekends. Then he opens up a store in South Hills up by Sears Roebuck on West Liberty Avenue in Dormont.
Across from Sears and Roebuck's.
And you come into that business right about that time.
I went to help him.
Yeah.
And we used to take seats out of the cars and everything and we used to put them on, take the seats out of the car, take them into the store,
right.
Put seat covers on, and bring them back and put them on. That was murder.
It was a hard business, but
they had good. I used to play dice in Jones's garage right there.
Next door.
On Saturday night, we used to get together and we'd play dice there. That made the extra money. If I had to get it from Marty, I was dead.
No, Marty was a tight-fisted businessman, but
tight-fisted. That one.
Let's not get into all of that, okay? But what happened? That business, Regency Products, moves from Dormont down south on West Liberty Avenue toward the Tubes. And opens up a business.
1425 West Liberty Avenue.
Right. And
yeah.
Marty expands there, and that business supports you, supports his family, Natalie, Marty, Joel, and Sharon, and then supports you and Shirley with Mark, Brian, and Jeff. And then who else? Who else was in that? Tom comes into the business.
Well, Sharon and so forth, and also the people who worked there.
Yeah, so how many employees were there?
At one time, it was around 14, 15 people.
Okay,
yeah.
So it was a middle-sized business, supported all those families.
Marty is like Tommy, didn't know how to talk to people.
Yeah.
They
but you
really,
did, you know?
They didn't really. There was no feeling. It was just cut and dry. You don't talk to people like that.
Yeah.
You call them by their first name and you get to know them. And I had a ball. I enjoyed it very much. But when Marty got his fingers into it, it was a disaster.
Well, that was much later. And, that was much later. I want you to talk about our dad. All right, okay?
Oh, my father.
Yeah, I want you to talk
He
about
was a spitting image.
It's our father.
That's our father.
That's right. It's our father. But he ends up, like you, without much hair.
Oh, hey, now I'm the belle of the ball of Dallas. My father he used to get very angry at me. I used to come in I I used to come in at 4 in the morning or 5 in the morning. He used to go to work, and he used to say, "You're a bum." But I love my father very much. He couldn't express himself. He would get angry at me and bite me on my arm.
Well, our father never finished school in Russia.
Well, and never learned English either.
No, he spoke Yiddish, he spoke Russian, and he spoke broken English. That's basically what it was. But he was he was a hard-working man. He always provided for his family, one way or another.
The family came first.
Yeah.
The family came. I remember when I was very small, he used to take me to the vaudeville, and he was a swinger in certain places. I'm sorry. I remember these things. I loved him very much. No matter, he couldn't express himself in English, but the biggest thing that always stood in my mind, when I used to come in, he used to say come in at 1 o'clock, 12 o'clock, and I used to come in 3, 4 in the morning or 5. He says, "You bum, you." And he says, I used to put my fists together. And he says, "Oh, you want to hit me?" I said, "No." He says, and he picked up my arm and he bit it. And I loved him for it, for the simple reason. I knew he loved us, and he just couldn't express his feelings.
No, he could not. No, he could not.
Hey, that's what makes life so different.
Yeah.
This is Mud Hall Road.
That's right. And you look terrific here, Norty.
I just got out of service.
Yeah, and that was about 45, 46.
No, I could be 46 or 51 or 52.
Yeah,
or
yeah.
That's when, what's her name? Little Gizmo from Cuban. Sarita came with us.
Yeah, Sarita came to live with us. Yeah. That's right.
That's when I was a boot.
I know, but why don't you like it?
I just looked too innocent.
That is true, but that's precisely what I like about it. Now that's interesting. I never heard you say that about that photo. Now here, you look terrific in this one too.
Yeah, because this is when I was home on discharge, I think, or whatever.
I think so too. Yeah.
You know, the worst thing in the Second World War in Okinawa, I'll never forget it. Sometimes I wake up thinking about it and crying. It's when I went down on patrol into this cavern. And there were these 2 young Marines burned to death. They must have, whatever. And they cut their testicles off and shove it in their mouth. I'll never forget that. Yeah. I still do. When I watch these World War II pictures, I cry.
I remember you didn't want to see the Clint Eastwood film. Did you ever see it? Letters from Iwo Jima?
Not letters. I seen the other one from the Japanese viewpoint.
That's the Letters from Iwo Jima.
Is that what it is? I seen that.
Yeah, that was terrible.
I couldn't sleep. I drank.
Yeah. So you did see that film.
And it just tears me up.
Yeah.
What the fuck does an 18-year-old kid know?
Yeah. What you have just seen has been a conversation between my brother Norty and myself, trying to recapture as much as possible our early years growing up in New York, Passaic, New Jersey, and Pittsburgh. If you wanted a neat, very tightly edited kind of conversation, this was not it. You can see by the relationship between my brother and myself how much we love one another. And it's that love that we want to communicate to everyone watching this video, because it's that love that we give as a gift to the next generation.